May Jesus be praised, and onward with Mary. Good and holy day to all you dear children in the sacred hearts of Jesus and Mary, and in the most chaste heart of Saint Joseph. Welcome back to our morning segment, Saints and Coffee. Today is Friday, the 14th of March, the first Friday of Lent, if one considers that the previous one is called the Friday after Ash Wednesday. We are in the week that slowly concludes the Sunday of Temptations and prepares us for the second Sunday of Lent, which is the Transfiguration of Jesus. It is prayer that transfigures us. The Holy Rosary is truly like a Mount Tabor that we can climb several times each day. God has granted the Hail Mary a new impetus, a new vigor to save this degenerate and perverse humanity. I thank you for listening yesterday evening to the very important catechesis, indeed given, here in Bergamo, titled The Woman Clothed with the Sun, Fatima and Russia. There were many faithful who stayed for the catechesis, out of about 180 who were present at the celebration yesterday. I thank you as well. The catechesis is available on the playlist of Radio Domina Nostra, that's the title. There it is, The Woman Clothed with the Sun, Fatima and Russia. There are some considerations at the margins of the commentary on chapter 12 of the Apocalypse that you would do well. If you would like to listen and catch up on what you missed, in case you were unable to connect yesterday. Today is Friday, the first Friday of Lent, as we were saying, obviously a day of prayer, fasting, and penance. I recommend abstaining from meat. Neither meat nor its derivatives are eaten, and this is a way to worship the Lord and honor His redemptive passion. And then there is the way of the cross, which on Fridays that are not during Lent, it is done personally. During these Fridays of Lent, it is our young seminarians from the Holy Curé d'Ars Seminary who help us at 5 p.m. to experience this moment of grace. I would like to express our gratitude to them for the seriousness and composure with which they already prayed the way of the cross last Friday, and they will do so again today at 5 o'clock. And since it is Friday, I remind you this year, 2025, dedicated to the Holy Rosary and the family. This evening there is a prayer with the pioneers of the Rosary and the families. I believe that one of the most beautiful reasons, we've said it many times, and we emphasize it many times because others will never say it, is that Radio Domina has incalculable merits, one of which is having broadcast the Mass at Beto Sordo, which otherwise would have remained the privilege of the somewhat more middle-class groups. Dominutella, Radio Domina, and the brothers have brought the Mass, traditional among the holy people of God, seeing simple people even yesterday, humble, common folk, living the traditional Mass is a great achievement. But a great achievement is having once again helped many faithful to pray. Here this is as you see the church, the auditorium of St. Biagio and St. Sisto, where yesterday we gathered to pray, and I was saying this appeal continuous prayer. It is what helps us, because truly this is the time to pray. Yesterday, which was the 13th of the month, we prayed for Russia. There was a lady, a young grandmother present who was Russian. She came to thank me for this prayer we had made. I was also saying that this evening we are gathering for this prayer, which I hope will involve you all. Then we will have the connection with the pioneers of the Rosary and Father Pavel. To Little Nazareth, then join a family from the March. It is evident that every week a family from one of the regions of Italy or the world connects for this Holy Rosary. This evening, it is the turn of the Marche region. Do not miss this appointment. Let us all pray the Holy Rosary together. The Rosary allows us in the morning to immerse ourselves in God. The Rosary during the day, by reciting it, allows us to remain gathered in God even in the midst of the storm. Of initiatives, of situations to face, the Rosary is our strength. I await you this evening at 9 o'clock. I would also like to say something very important. Thanks to dear Susanna. This is truly a thank you that springs from my heart, because none of the collaborators suggested it to me this morning. Susanna does an invaluable job of translating my texts from Italian to Spanish. She's a uni lecturer. I greet you affectionately, you who with great passion are committed to translating my texts, even motivating me. Because, for example, let me give an example. I proposed putting it in a book. Instead, You told me, Father, the printed version is important because it can circulate better. Because when you come here, you see how there are people who believe in it. This moves me greatly. We are talking about what is Argentina, the end of the world, as they say, and therefore it is something that brings me great joy. I thank Susanna, and surely this work must spread. The Lord will not fail to reward the effort you are making. The dear Susanna, whom I greet with affection. I would also like to say something before talking about upcoming appointments. Then we will go to today's episode. Tomorrow evening, there is the catechesis. As you know, small great heroes of faith. It is the 26th episode, and there is a twist. Meanwhile, I say it now, then I will say it this evening, because tomorrow there is no Saints and Coffee, so I invite you to the Saturday evening episode, the day before. We will be in Genoa with the faithful of the little remnant who wish to stay even after dinner for this moment of grace. And in the evening, here is the important announcement. But it is prompted, it's not something I make up. Practically for the first time, I am forced to dedicate a second episode to the same subject. I am talking about the servant of God, Manuel Fodera. Here, because so many people, really a lot, when I first approached him, Manuel, being Sicilian like me, I felt a great affection for him. I felt very close to him. But I couldn't imagine that since I talked about him last Saturday, I don't remember where we were. Because look, we travel so much that after a couple of days I lose track of where we were. We move so continuously. I don't remember where we were, but in any case, what I would like to say is that this 9-year life has greatly impacted people. It seems he must have charisma and a mission to accomplish as well. Yesterday, a faithful member of the small Lombard remnant gave me this book here, which I desired, but I didn't know how to do it. Here it is, I'll show you. Look, Manuel, the subtitle is rather break time, small. Little Warrior of Light. This is a photo of Manuel Fodera, the servant of God. Pray to him. Here are also the drawings he made when he was in bed at the end of the book. Then there is also a very beautiful, very intense photographic reportage by the same Manuel. This is the tomb in Cala Tefimi, full of flowers. There is the Madonna, the port of the Holy Virgin, I believe the one of Medjugorje, yes, because then he had heard about Medjugorje, etc. There are still photos indeed of Manuel. This is the day of the first communion. Let's see if I can show it to you anyway. Tomorrow evening we will show them better. And then tomorrow evening we will talk again about Manuel. He deserves it. He won, in my opinion. Thanks to Supponent Natra in heaven, even the temperament the character has, something that influences Manuel wants. Make noise, as they say in Sicilian. It seems that God wants to grant him many graces. I'll read you a passage and then we'll move on to today's episode. So on Palm Sunday, 𝐤'Z𝐾, the mother, informs Sister Teresa, who was one of the nuns taking care of the little one, that Manuel had just had a rough night. Later, the sister calls back for news, and the child himself answers the phone and tells the sister, I was unwell and didn't want to take the paracetamol because I wanted to help Jesus carry the cross. 9 years, I don't know what. It's really... But Mum told me that Jesus is still happy if I take paracetamol because I've already suffered a lot. What do you think, Sister Teresa? The mother is right. Obey. Manuel. But is it true, he says, that there are people who do not love Jesus? And she, the sister, yes, Manuel. Manuel replies, but this is like crucifying him again. Greetings, Sister Teresa is about to avoid praying for her. But I stopped to write about memories because I thought of a Carmelite asking a suffering child to pray. So I decided, don't you see, ask. Several weeks later, Manuel is again at the monastery. Why are you here? I'm coming back from the hospital. Her mother tells her she dropped by to say she prayed for her the day before. Teresa is speechless. Is something wrong? 𝐤'Z𝐾 asks her. No, nothing. I had thought of calling to ask him to pray for me. Manuel not only prayed, but he also wrote a little letter that his mother gives to her. My dear Jesus, I love you very much. The children, I entrust these beloved sisters to your precious heart. Protect them, assist them, support them every day of their lives. They love me so much, and you know it well. They always pray for me, and their prayers rise to heaven, and you make me heal. Each one of them is a precious little heart that makes me happy and makes me feel better. I recommend to you, dear Teresa, that I did not want to ask you for prayers, and that child instead prays for you particularly. Put it in your hands, etc., etc. This means the book is quite interesting. So tomorrow evening there's the episode titled Manuel, the Warrior of Light. There's more. Tomorrow evening at 9 o'clock. I am about to travel, heading to Liguria. The weather does not look promising at all. In fact, there is a weather alert for thunderstorms expected on the charming Ligurian side. Anyway, let's go, and then whatever will be, will be. We're now used to everything: snow, rain, cold, heat. Truly, this is a missionary work. It is a missionary epic. In Italy, one would not say it, but it is so. It is in Italy that it happens, also because there are many enemies of all kinds who want to come. I was saying it last night while returning to the hotel to Fra Celestino, that unexpected warriors of evil come to try to destroy the work of the small remnant, so we must insist. Tomorrow evening we are in Genoa. Tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. Courage, faithful of the small Ligurian remnant. Come. There are always about 100, usually those who come from Liguria. Let's see if again this time, actually one of the last times it was 120 to 130. At 4 o'clock at the Mercer San Biagio Hotel, there will be the opportunity for confessions, the rosary, the consecration to the Madonna, and the Holy Mass with a moment of adoration. And the same on Sunday, the day after tomorrow, the second Sunday of Lent, the Sunday of the Transfiguration of Jesus. We are in Bologna. The hall is already completely full, but there is still the possibility to be there with some relative tolerance for those who might come. Perhaps then we will organize ourselves, my dear children. Do not be discouraged. Indeed, it's important that you come, you see. It's important that you come, and my collaborators inform me that there are already 212 reservations, so we are looking at around 200 people. It is still possible to come because there is room for 20 to 30 more people. These are the appointments, but I remind you that next Wednesday's appointment is the main event. Next Wednesday, dear children, the novena has begun, and we are invited to the Solemnity of St. Joseph in Verona Bussolengo. Here it is, the Montresor Hotel Tower Post on Mantegna Street, where we were for Ash Wednesday. On that day, there were more than 400 people on a weekday. And so next Wednesday is also a weekday. However, despite this, it is the Solemnity of St. Joseph. On that occasion, there will be a blessing on the bread given to you free. Yesterday, I was able to speak with the baker, a true Venetian. I think she's Venetian, if I remember correctly, or maybe I'm mistaken. And we already said that she will add fennel. She had the fennel brought in to put inside the bread, because then in St. Joseph, in the south, it is made with fennel. And so I learned many things in the north about the Christian faith, and they learned some things from us in the south. It's very nice, this commercial exchange. Anyone who wishes can have free bread distribution, and then the version of the bread and the distribution of St. Joseph's bread. Then there will be the Father's version. So best wishes to all the fathers who come, but best wishes in general to all fathers, especially those of the little remainder. The workers' version, and the delivery of the scapular, the imposition of the scapular of the most chaste heart of St. Joseph. And around 4 o'clock we will start, but then we will wait a bit for the evening Holy Mass to allow those who work and wants to arrive on time to be there, so that the blessing of the fathers will be done only at the end of the Mass, to allow those who work to have time to arrive. Entry is free. There is no need for booking at the Montresor Hotel next Wednesday. This is the festive day, and the last chance where Brother Celestino and I are in the north, and we would like to wish you a happy Easter. I more than Brother Celestino. However, we are expecting you. Do not miss this appointment. Thank you for responding to the appeal regarding the Perpetual Rosary. The secretary of this project, Simona, has informed me. They have let me know that responses have arrived. Thank goodness, this is a good sign. On the other hand, we must pray, and praying the perpetual Holy Rosary is essential, so that we know that in the small remnant there is a continuous rosary, even at night. This reassures me greatly. The appeal I would like to make is that if possible, please send only the message, without trying to call, because poor Simona finds herself in difficulty. Well, now let's go to today's episode, which is absolutely interesting. For me, today is also a special day because I am from Palermo, and it is well known, it was said at first, then this thing was somewhat dropped, the Palermitan priest, as if to say that being from Palermo almost means a disqualification. Well, I am honored to be Palermitan and Sicilian. There is a beautiful song by Lucio Dalla, the Sicilian. Listen, I am happy to be Sicilian, especially to be from Palermo, which gave birth, for example, to Giovanni Falcone, to name just one. Why say that? Because today in Palermo, the feast of a holy priest of Palermo is celebrated, called the Don Bosco of Sicily by the newspapers of the time. I'm talking about Blessed Giacomo Cusimano, founder of a... Here he is, this is the photo. Died young, around 54 to 55 years old, like Saint Gaspar del Bufalo, with whom he has many similarities. A man entirely devoted to God, a miracle worker. He saved miracles among the people of Palermo, where in the second half of the 19th century, and he dedicated himself to the poorest of the poor. He founded an institution called the Morsel of the Poor. This is the urn with the relics of the saint, of the blessed, because blessed. There he's and I have been several times. I used to go celebrate exactly on March 14th, there with my parishioners, because the urn is located in a church right in the historic heart of Palermo. He dedicated himself to the poorest of the poor, and for this he had known immense sufferings, immense trials, which finally exhausted him. He was deeply in love with the Eucharist and the Immaculate Madonna. And then he imagined, slept with the cassock so that he could be ready to go even at night to help people, but he did not sleep in the bed. I have visited the holy places. Unfortunately, we have pearls like Manuel Fodera in Sicily, the young boy we were talking about a little while ago, like the blessed Pina Suriano. It is not clear, however, why the saints from the south, especially as we go further south, perhaps it's partly our fault from there, struggle to become known at a national level. Unfortunately, that's it, unless they're as sensational as Padre Pio. I was saying, Blessed Giacomo Cusimano, I saw the places where he lived. He didn't sleep in the bed, but under the bed he had made a cross, and he slept. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he could do it. In fact, he died young. He slept on a cross made of wood, you see? On a piece of wood in the shape of a cross, and then he would do penances. Imagine he would prepare food for the poor, and yet he would deliberately delay eating what the poor left behind. What the poor left behind. He had boundless humility. Once a young girl, the daughter of a poor man, asked him, "But who are you? What is your name?" "My name is Father Garbage, is that okay?" "Tell everyone that I am Father Garbage." He had an immeasurable humility. He performed miracles, like Don Bosco. As Don Bosco, he multiplied the grain, for example. One day, when there was nothing to eat for the poor, he had a blood sister who followed him, poor Vincenzina, whose beatification process is underway. She is from Palermo. They were born in the historic heart of Palermo, precisely where Giovanni Falcone would later be born, right in those areas. And imagine that one day he says to his sister, "Go and get the bread from the pantry." And she rightly says to him, Giacomo Guglielmo told Giacomo Guglielmo that there was no bread. And I mean, we're talking about high-level, very high-level figures of the blessed Giacomo Cosmano. I cannot speak about him. Instead, let's move on to today's episode, From the Stars to the Stables. It's really the case to say it. In fact, you see the title that the director is now proposing to you. MONS.BUX, spokesperson for the...
È proprio il caso di dirlo. Infatti vedete il titolo che la regia adesso vi propone, Monsignor Bux,
Post-Bergoglio dream. Here, so yesterday afternoon at the extraordinary celebration held in Bergamo, truly a moment of grace, of intense faith. I thank you. You provide me with accessibility. You are ultimately the small remnant that allows me to move forward. How many times, while pondering my journey, have I been deeply tempted by the very idea of retiring altogether? To retire for the pleasure of seeing how it ends against all these unfortunate detractors of Don Minutella, to enjoy the spectacle from my home. What is happening under everyone's eyes is disgraceful, but then people stop me, those whom I pay, like unfortunate souls, say that when they call to say you are the great prelate, you must deliver Russia, you are our guide, I pay them. And how many people then, when I greet you, know those who love me, that I cannot lie about this? Say to me, Father, thank you, almost as if they knew that, until yesterday, thank you, Father. Do not give up. Go on, do not stop. You are our guide, you are giving us help. Then I must also say that this is a work, fortunately, I say this for all of you, otherwise I would have already retired to the community, that is, with the brothers of the fellowship, and pray that they hold firm, because the devil does everything, certainly will do, has done, does, and will do everything to separate them from me. There is no doubt that Satan is about his business. He tells the demons, this is my business. I must succeed. Slowly, he builds the web and then... So I publicly appeal to the brothers of the association, return daily to renew your trust and collaboration with me. Yesterday, for example, I was greatly heartened when people asked me to thank Don Enrico Bernasconi for the catechesis on the family. I have already sent Don Enrico a voice message this morning because I wanted to tell him, but now I am doing it publicly. Don Enrico gave the catechesis last Wednesday on the family, truly the people, yesterday in Bergamo. He asked me to thank him. Father, please thank Don Enrico. Convey a thank you to Don Enrico. Encourage him not to abandon this cycle of catechesis on the family anymore. He said many people because it gives us strength and encourages us. Thank you to Don Enrico for this series of catechesis. But while there is this whole situation like this, let's see how it goes now. In the meantime, for those who might not know, the geopolitical chessboard moves just like playing Monopoly. Each day something new. For example, sensational news. Putin rejects the 30-day truce proposal in the Ukrainian-Russian war put forward by Trump, and explains why. I listened a little while ago. Putin says there are 9,000 kilometers as a war front. 9,000 kilometers is no joke. 9,000 kilometers of war frontier. Putin says, for the vast majority of this war line, the Russian troops, he went there to Kursk to see the troops in person. Putin, the Russian troops are winning. And he said something that shocked me. He said, we make an appeal to the Ukrainian troops these days, who have only two options, either die or surrender. Western geopolitical scholars confirm that it is not propaganda. It is indeed true that on the battlefield, Russia, which has not even invested the maximum of its resources, this is important to say, is winning. At this very moment, Russia has victory in hand. So it is obvious that Putin, the supreme leader of the Russian armed forces, says, wait a moment, I want some guarantees. Because I would not want these 30 days to serve as military fodder for the Ukrainian troops to recover, because at this moment we are winning. So the situation, as you can see, is quite complex, because Trump apparently got a bit upset about this no from Putin, and consequently, the Russo-American dialectic is seemingly re-emerging, though its full meaning remains somewhat unclear. Absolutely nothing. We must intensify the prayer of the Rosary. But while all this is happening, there's Bergoglio. Now, leaving aside the fantasy version of the unrecognizable 𝐥'𝐞, I had told him, no one believed me, I am never believed, yet then things come to pass. I had said, look, it is advisable not to separate, because I give you, despite everything your people tell you, an act of serious credibility. Look at what happened to 𝐥'𝐞 since he left with Father Ferré. He makes up the story of the Swiss guards. Who knows if the administrator has understood the levels we have reached? I mean, there would be a real pope instead of Bergoglio, that the voice wasn't real, because his excellent collaborator Tampieri proved it wasn't Bergoglio's voice. But no, instead it was Bergoglio. It was really him. In short, in this situation, where it's unclear what will happen to Bergoglio, people are starting to predict the period after Bergoglio. And there emerges the dream of the Una Cooney, of which MONS.BUX, 𝐷𝐚𝐼𝐿𝐴_BUX, is an excellent representative in terms of hypocrisy, clerical falsehood, repeated cowardice, as I will now demonstrate, because otherwise these are unfounded accusations. I will prove it. I remind you that we are talking to say who the subject is about that Monsignor who, with his savoir-faire, always so calm, etc. He came to visit me in Little Nazareth to urgently ask me about Cardinal Burke. I said maybe they will make me a cardinal. I went there to be told. I sank into the sofa, and there was MONS.BUX, who acted as an excellent mediator, that I had to go kneel before Pope Francis to ask for forgiveness. But I said in that context there, and then I wrote the letter. But what should I ask forgiveness for? Why what? I am shouting the truth. They were silent, and then I had to retreat to a monastery. And when I wrote to the carrier Burke that I would never ever do that, imagine who armed Burke in books. You trust these poor people, a curve that flowers these subjects here. Who asked for whom, to whom was it asked? Was it asked, not a books to come to Little Nazareth and organize a night, a meeting with the cadena of Burke, who put everything aside to meet me in, let's say, a rather private place. And when I wrote that I would never accept this, MONS.BUX, with a paternal, affectionate manner, dropped the mask, because until that moment he was being a hypocrite, managing it in a Pharisaic way that surpasses those of the Sanhedrin, as I will now show you. Because now he is capable, now he raises his voice, now speaks ill of Pope Francis, you know. Now that that poor man is dying, he simply cannot take it any longer, you know. He speaks ill of him now, he speaks ill of him, says he is a man of contradiction, when for years, where was Bux? Where has Bux been for years? Didn't Bux notice? Why is he speaking openly now? Because that poor man is dying. He can't take it anymore. Anyway, he can't take it anymore. Come on, we have to accept this. I mean, maybe he'll recover, but, 89 years old, going on 89. He's always been a man who has endured a lot. So Bux, spokesperson for the dream of a moderate pope, maybe Burke will become pope. Bux, spokesperson for the unaccom world, hypocritical and false, who for years has celebrated Mass in union with the heretical apostate Bergoglio, and now they are waiting for the resolution of the case. I believe that as a broad introduction it should suffice. Let's air the video, and slowly we will comment. Listen very carefully. Friends of Visionne TV, welcome to our new meeting. I am happy to introduce our guest joining us today, Monsignor 𝐷𝐚𝐼𝐿𝐴_BUX. Thank you for coming back. Yes, I invite you. Monsignor, in the meantime, I ask you if you have any precise news about the health condition of the pontiff who has been hospitalized for a long time at the 𝐥'𝐼𝐿Ae, as the news is conflicting and not always consistent with each other. No, I don't actually know any more than what we all know. One can only indeed make assumptions, as has already evidently occurred with other prominent pontiffs, that in the final phase, how break time point to say, problems arise in the governance of the church that obviously need to be balanced with health conditions, urgencies, concerns, and so we can make all the suppositions we want.
Urgenze, preoccupazioni, e quindi si possono fare tutte le supposizioni che vogliamo.
There are those who fear the possible resignation of Francesco as well, in the event that he might soon be discharged. Now, this matter of resignations from being an exceptional occurrence should almost become a practice that breaks a millennia-old tradition. Yes, resignations are mentioned. Let's consider a hypothesis. If the Pope has lost his lucidity, because someone suggested that the last message he sent, which is not very clear, but it seems it was said in Spanish, and at the end, I think it even talks about pizza, could give rise to imagining a lack of lucidity of the Pope. Pulmonary, provided that they successfully restrict the flow of oxygen to the brain, and in doing so, significantly undermine the capacity for reasoning, 𝐥'𝐞𝐈, and argumentation. This is not an outlandish hypothesis. Could also be a principle of invalidity. It is already foreseen that the Pope, in case of invalidity, especially mental, obviously confirmed, how to say, supported by professors, by doctors, by physicians, not suspected, of course, can lead to resignation. Everyone who knows Bergoglio recognizes his formidable power. He is not very inclined to resign. He has also said it. It is true that sometimes he has also said the opposite, because he praised Pope Benedict for having taken that step. But, he has a very contradictory character. Indeed, he is the embodiment of the principle of contradiction. He says one thing, then denies it. By now, he is known in this regard. And yet, Monsignor, it seems he is also making some very delicate decisions during this period of convalescence. Some say he is actually taking someone on his own behalf. Is this doubt reasonable? What decisions are actually being considered? I was also reading about the reorganization of power, the beatification of certain figures. It seems that he is also making some decisions that truly break time impact the life of the Church. It may be that these are decisions perhaps in progress for a long time, which then reach their end point, and therefore one must then sign, decide, and so on. It could be this type. There could also be pressures because it is known that in crucial moments, especially regarding health, some people might be more Catholic than the Pope himself and could make him endorse decisions that change, as they say, the rules of the game while the game is in progress. For example, on the 1st of March, he appointed a woman, Sister Raffaella Petrini, as the first president of the Pontifical Commission for the Vatican City-State. Is he also making appointments? Does he find the time to make appointments during this period of illness? But it may well be that these appointments were already arranged in advance and have simply reached their final stage of decision, so he now offers his approval and his signature. It could also be this, and admittedly, it remains, in all honesty, somewhat unclear, if you will. Certainly, this appointment, experts have said, is contradictory to the law that was promulgated by the Vatican City a few months ago. and therefore it clearly contradicts a law that has been very recently published. But you know, he, partly out of ignorance, partly also, I wouldn't want to say because of cost, but almost of the law, has often and willingly changed the cards on the table. But by now the collaborators know this well. Then it is known that there are sycophantic collaborators who indulge, it's true, and those instead who... Here then, you know it is said in a proverb, when the cat's away, the mice will play. The mice are coming out into the open because the cat is hospitalized. I sincerely hope that the so-called Pope Francis recovers, and let them show him this video. I will acquire it and send it to Santa Marta. I want to enjoy serving a sentence of forced labor in Azerbaijan, or joining the Ukrainian army under MONS.BUX, who is one of the rats that for years have been known to have the red tucked away beneath the bed under the covers, and who now, in the absence of the cat, are free to dance. It is something indecent what he attacks with this pharisaical detachment in the face of the turmoil the Church is experiencing. Monsignor MONS.BUX comes and with his so elegant manner speaks of an ignorant Pope Francis, because he did not say it in past years, because he did not denounce this perhaps very serious anomaly of an ignorant Pope. He even talks about a Pope who has contempt for the law. Why didn't he say it in past years? Openly? Why are you saying it now? And then, of course, there is all that matter of talking about the final phase, the extraordinary condition of the Church, the possibility of dimensions. Maybe the Pope is no longer lucid. He talked about pizza. But Bergoglio's that way. We have to defend Bergoglio from MONS.BUX. Can you believe it? Because he is a sick man. Old. Bux is not even that young either. He should prepare himself like all of us, and they target him. Got it? Do you know who Unicom are? They drop the mask. Bux in front of a Bergoglio, still a bit plump but recovering, who is unwell, old, no longer leads or governs as before, describes him as ignorant and having contempt for the law. Let's move on. The attack should already be enough. Everything we've heard so far, right? To confirm to us that once again the 𝐦𝐚𝐿 have been condemned by God to total disarray. Let's continue to listen, unfortunately, to the hypocritical waltz of this man who speaks only in Pharisaic 𝐸𝐵Z. And they do not do it. It is clear that at this stage, when he cannot receive everyone, he receives those he knows to be the most loyal indeed, more or less. I do not know if among these loyal ones is included the Secretary of State, because it seems, from the experts, the Vaticanists, that the Secretary of State does not exactly enjoy his favor. However, these are mere suppositions deduced from events and accounts. Statements, declarations, in short, sir. Do you hear a strange noise, perhaps inadvertently touching the microphone while you speak right now? No, well now you can't hear it anymore. Listen, Monsignor, in any case, this is a papacy that is coming to an end. Naturally, we hope that Pope Francis recovers, but objectively, partly due to age, partly due to ailments, it is a papacy that is preparing to conclude. What remains? What, in your opinion, is the spiritual and political legacy left by 12 years of Bergoglio's governance? First of all, I sincerely believe that it is truly rather a very problematic legacy. Some have described it as disastrous, because precisely for the principle of contradiction that he embodies, I must preface that this expression originates from one of the most intriguing instances that have been observed in recent times. Deans of Vaticanists, Sandro Magister, who coined it in a piece in which he photographed Bergoglio 3 to 4 years ago, in a piece he wrote, or if one wants to refer to another piece written the following year, I think 2020, by Galli della Loggia in the Corriere, in which he said that Bergoglio is not a politician, he is an ideologue. That is, he is driven by an ideology. If one were to carefully take these precious photographs into account, then indeed the resulting legacy, for whoever may follow, is very likely to prove, in the end, problematic. Naturally, it will be necessary to see how the College of Cardinals, which, at least under the current rules, must gather between 91 and 94 votes to elect his successor, a task that is naturally not easy, also because one should not assume that all the cardinals created by Bergoglio are his exact replicas. It is not so. There are even cardinals who do not know why they were made cardinals by him. And we could say other things. So let's say that conclaves have always been full of surprises. And let's say that the confusion created with this pontificate at both doctrinal and disciplinary levels, how to say, needs to be clarified, and this clarification is desired by both the center, the right, and the left. There is a sacred college. It is not, let's say, a prerogative request solely conservatives. Therefore, surprises, how to say, concerns, some of which have already surfaced externally. But it's not surprising, because in the long history of the Church, these remarkable events have indeed taken place and have echoed through time, simply because it truly reflects the profound human dimension of the ecclesial reality to which the Lord consciously wished to bind. The salvation, otherwise, he would have entrusted the Church to the angels, let's say. So he wanted to entrust it to men, starting with St. Peter, who, as we well know, was not exactly an example of consistency, both during the life of Christ, but also afterwards. We will remember the dispute between him and St. Paul, if it was necessary, before becoming Christians. Becoming Jews, that is, becoming surrounded. Here we are then, entering more clearly into these 40 minutes of interview with Monsignor MONS.BUX, spokesperson for the post-Bergoglio unecumist dream. He talks as if he is already looking ahead. I would invite him to be very careful with himself and with all those unecume. He is a gossip monger, I would define him that way. The gossip monger books talk about the dramatic situations we are experiencing while we toil, not sparing a single moment to go around, to keep the people of God united, who remain deeply Catholic because they are not contaminated like 𝐥'𝐿 with the heresy of Bergoglio. He does gossip like Novella 2000. We're at those levels. To the question on the spiritual legacy of the 12 years of Bergoglio, as if Bergoglio is already dead and buried. Be careful, Bux, he responds now. The mouse that dances because the cat is not there speaks of a problematic legacy and of Sacerosa. If Bux is short now, what would you like? He's that way. And then this emphasis, be very careful, expressions related to dawn begin to emerge, perhaps even unconsciously. These people expect the dawn. They don't know what's coming. because already halfway through the journey, Bux has the question about the next conclave, which is true that it should foresee 91 to 94 votes. Something, as Franceschino was hinting just now while Bux was saying it, quite problematic. But he talks about surprise, Bux talks about surprise. Later, you'll see what he says. He already talks about surprise, and then he says that the church, since the situation is of the Catholic Church, the one they call the Catholic Church, as Father Faré wants, Father Faré who now has his following, because that is the Catholic Church, though it has a too human face. Can you tell me what is different between what Bux says and what Cardinal Sarah said, the church with a handicapped face, to save both goats and cabbages? Let's go on. Indeed, now comes the best bit. So, it is clear that the interplay of temperaments and the enduring character qualities always come into play in these situations. However, one must, without a doubt, place trust in the fact that the Church, for 2,000 years, in accordance with the promises of Christ, it never falters, for it is firmly founded on Him. To the extent that the Apostle, the Pope, in a manner reminiscent of St. Peter, serves not only as a foundation stone, but, indeed, as an essential support. Thereby, he makes a significant contribution. If not, Christ will see to it that the problem is resolved, so to speak, when this occurs. What are the most controversial points that should be addressed? Here, you were also saying before, on the doctrinal level, there's a lot of confusion. Many certainties have been undermined. What are, in your opinion, the issues on the doctrinal level that the next Pope will have the duty to clarify precisely? One of the doctrinal positions he expressed is of a dogmatic nature, that is, of infallible truth, because he has never made dogmatic admissions. Is that correct? Given this, for example, the story of the Synodal Church is in need of clarification, because the Church is not synodal. Indeed, in the Creed, we profess our belief in one holy Catholic Apostolic Church, not a synodal one, as it simply does not exist. Synodality is a modality. The exercise of power, rather than the magisterium, is exercised by both the Pope and the bishops, as a modality. Here the gossip-monger Bux reaches the height of hypocrisy, because when Toscano asks what controversial points need to be clarified in the next pontificate, he replies by saying that, all things considered, there isn't much to clarify, because it's Bergoglio. Pope Francis hasn't really made a statement. You see, look at the punctum dolens, which however becomes not the finger of Archimedes, but the point of Archimedes, and it becomes exactly the center of gravitation, gravitational around which the whole unacumistic system collapses. Because Pope Francis, there are no controversial points in Toscano, because Pope Francis he said nonsense. But he has not placed the pontifical posterior on the chair of St. Peter. He said them in the corridors. So in the theological idea of the unreachable Bux, because now I remind you that Toscano's channel is veganos. So what is brewing inside the pot? Because Bux is not vegano. But what is brewing in the pot? The key is we're outside. We are outside. Got it? So according to Bux's theological vision, the Pope can even swear in the Vatican corridors. He can say that the Madonna is not a virgin. The Pope has a meeting with the President of the French Republic, moves from the Vatican room, and passes through the Clementine Hall via the corridor of St. Urban. So, while he came out of the bathroom, the Pope, he tidied himself and walked, began to say the things that Bergoglio had said. So, point what? Anyway, this is not ex cathedra, as you can understand. the point of weakness of a sharpness which they, on the other hand, believe to be their strength, because they think that the next pope, regarding Amoris Laetitia, the trust supplication of Abu Dhabi, and all the things we know, the next pope, you will hear, will solve things, because it is not infallible magisterium. And this is not true. It is not true because the Catechism of the Catholic Church and the document on the Petrine ministry in the life of the Church, signed by Benedict XVI, state otherwise. They affirm that there is a permanent assistance of the Holy Spirit. So much so that in history there have been popes like Honorius and also John the 22nd who made mistakes in some things, but essentially reconsidered or stopped there. Instead, Bergoglio is unrestrained. He's not the Pope, and because it's not true that there isn't a magisterium that has solidified. Other than that, Amoris Laetitia is an official document of the Church, a papal letter. Supplicant trust. Indeed, it is an official document of the Church that carries the same weight as the Dominus Isis of 2000. But evidently, Bux in the waltz of hypocrisies and gossip does not notice it. So to the question, he says Christ will take care of solving the problem. The problem with Bux and all the 𝐸𝐻𝐿 is that they have not understood and cannot imagine how our Lord has decided to resolve it. Let's move on. I mean that before making a decision, I consult adequately. That is, I check if the others who are with me in steering the boat and have something to say, want to correct, etc. But beyond this, synodality is not. Among other things, there have been interventions by Eastern prelates because it is known that in the East there is a synodal structure in the governance of the Orthodox churches, including Eastern Catholic ones. However, they intervene saying that the synodality the Pope speaks of has nothing to do with their synodality. Why? Because it is a confusing joint discussion where on one hand there is debate and an attempt or desire to reach shared conclusions. On the other hand, though, he makes decisions on his own. Certainly, there are those who say that the Pope can always decide on his own. Indeed, some firmly believe so, while others concur, warning that if you introduce a subject for internal debate, you cannot then suddenly contradict your earlier no, because this matter simply needs the proper time to mature. But this belongs to his contradiction. I have to defend the so-called Pope Francis. Unbelievable what the gossip monger is able to suggest, because he is saying something absolutely non-existent. The Pope is absolutely free, after having held a synod, to have the final say even against the majority, because it is not the majority that makes the difference. Have you seen how they eventually fall due to their hypocrisies? The Lord abandons them to the spirit of deceit. Follow me closely. There's the striking example of 𝐵𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 Vitae by Paul VI, who gathered the cardinals, the bishops, held a consultation where almost the majority of the bishops proposed the use of condoms. And the Pope said no, the final word belongs to the Pope. I have to defend none other than the false Pope Francis. And what is the absolutely free for the Pope to decide, because he is the supreme head of the Church. And it is not said that even if there are advisory bodies, he must comply with them, because they think that way. It is the Pope who has the final say, St. Pius X teaches. Consider the level we have reached with MONS.BUX. He deserves it. He deserves it also for having treated me the way he did. I have no doubts about that. Let's move on. Entertain me with the gossip. He said at the beginning, and the case. The most evident case was indeed the statement on the blessing of so-called irregular couples, whether obviously heterosexual or homosexual, which, as well known, truly sparked what can only be described as a hornet's nest among roughly half of the world's episcopate, who did not agree with it, and even stated so openly. And so, that is another issue that will need to be
essere
addressed.
affrontato,
Monsignor,
diciamo.
even the most political issues have been at the forefront during Bergoglio's pontificate, including his wavering stance regarding the role of the great powers.
Anche suo posizionamento ondivago rispetto al ruolo delle grandi
Know that
potenze. Ecco, si sa che
the American episcopate, the more conservative one, does not love him, and now even with the return of Donald Trump, the relations between Bergoglio and that part of the episcopate were likely to worsen further. Is there really this very strong dialectic between the conservative American episcopate and those closest to Bergoglio? Dialectic's a word.
È una parola
Noble, it would mean there is a dialogue, a discussion, but it seems that is not the case. There's a contrast. Bergoglio erred in every international move.
Ma anche perché Bergoglio ha sbagliato tutti i suoi interventi politici internazionali.
Why?
Perché
But it's not me saying it, some analysts say it, and there are debates going around. Journalists who have followed, who have noted down all the things done by Bergoglio at an international level. For example, first he courted Russia and the Patriarchate of Moscow. He met Patriarch Kirill in Havana. Then he called him a puppeteer's altar boy. Regarding Ukraine, this for when Russia arrived, for when Ukraine arrived. Before, he remarked that NATO had proceeded to bark under the yard in Ukraine. You know that the Secret Services have filed us for having reported this sentence. Then he told Zelensky that he had to raise the white flag. Practically, as a result, she received the reprimand, notably saying you want surrender and so on and so forth. Let's not even talk about what happened in China, where they practically sold out. It's true, with an agreement whose terms are not known clearly, but which in fact ends up endorsing the names of the bishops proposed by the Chinese government. So there is no longer a negotiation. In the meantime, I asked the control room to go to minute 25 now, which is not very far, 25 to 26, because we cannot show the entire thing. We are almost at the conclusion. Here, the gossip of MONS.BUX continues, who is truly an expression of a sterile, indeed Pharisaic approach, without heart and without participation. Almost as if he were a secular analyst. We are talking about a Monsignor, a long-serving priest, a liturgist, who speaks about the church, about the current situation as if Giuliano Ferrara
Giuliano Ferraro, Vittorio Sgarbi, senza nessun pathos, senza nessun minima traccia, almeno dal punto di vista visivo, di quello che invece Don Minutella, se non piange ancora, e per decenza manifesta da anni: il dolore, il travaglio, il pathos, capito? La tlipsis, direbbe Paolo. Ma dov'è quello in Bux? Questi sono quelli che salveranno la Chiesa, questi sono gli esponenti del mondo unacum. Beh, meno male che esiste il piccolo resto, esiste Don Minutella. Dichiarazione della fiducia supplica, c'è niente, e lui si limita a dire che il mezzo episcopato non l'ha accettato, ed è una cosa così ovvia. Per Bux, cioè fra un po' Bux ci dice che ne so io, le cose più strampalate ce le fa passare. Poc'anzi ha detto della questione che, siccome Bergoglio non ha fatto alcuna affermazione ex cattedra, perciò tutto quello che ha detto non è importante. Come non è importante? Allora il Papa che caspita ci sta a fare? Scegliamo un Papa che si manifesta e si mostra solo quando parla ex cattedra, perché tanto tutto il resto lo pigliamo se ci piace. Questa è la Chiesa cattolica di Bux, questa è la visione della cattolica. Se c'è von Balthasar si rivolta della tomba. Ma come? Mezzo episcopato non accetta un documento ufficiale della Chiesa. Fossimo stati in altri tempi, fuoco, come si dice, fiamma alle polveri, fuoco alle polveri. perché non si può pensare che mezzo episcopale, questa è sì, insubordinazione, questo è ammutinamento. Il Papa parla e i fedeli rispondono, a partire dai vescovi. E per BUX invece, siccome la fiducia supplicans prevede la versione delle coppie irregolari, e quindi invece Episcopo lui le parla così, come se Giuliano Ferraro o Vittorio Sgarbi che stanno parlando della Chiesa, un uomo di Chiesa che parla della Chiesa così, con questo distacco che a me mi mette paura. Se la Chiesa è affidata a uomini come questi, meno male che ci siamo noi. Ma andiamo adesso alla fase concitata, perché purtroppo tutto non si può ascoltare, meno male. Dopo, mi raccomando, è un buon caffè per tutti, perché se questo è il futuro, miei cari figliuoli, anche solo per via dell'età, comunque, meno male che ancora tutto sommato sono abbastanza giovani. Ascoltiamo adesso invece la questione del dopo Bergoglio, del conclave, vediamo se riusciamo ad acchiapparla.
Senta, Monsignore, prima lei diceva è possibile che il prossimo conclave elegga un pontefice che non sia affatto in continuità con Bergoglio, perché lui tutto sommato non controlla, non determina il suo successore, ha nominato anche dei cardinali che la pensano in maniera diametralmente opposta. Ecco, lei ha già un'idea su quale potrà essere, diciamo, il tipo di figura che prenderà le redini dopo l'esperienza di Bergoglio?
Innanzitutto bisogna augurarsi, come è giusto che sia e come penso la maggior parte dei cardinali dovrebbero fare, dato che il conclave viene fatto nella Cappella Sistina davanti al giudizio universale, come a dire: guardate che al momento opportuno, se commettete magagne, dovrete rendere conto a quello lì che sta raffigurato al centro con la mano in alto. Allora c'è da auspicare che i cardinali, come è giusto, riflettano attentamente, si mettano la cosiddetta mano sulla coscienza e, dopo aver dibattuto nei giorni precedenti sullo stato della Chiesa, appunto come dicevo prima, uno stato confusionale, per certi versi anche esplosivo, come dire, decidano in scienza e coscienza. Ecco, questo è l'auspicio. Se poi uno vuole fare un auspicio, come dire, ipotetico, ci vuole un papa mite innanzitutto, cioè non un papa dittatore, un papa che abbia la cifra della mitezza, ecco, come era Papa Benedetto, o come era Carlo Wojtyła, è vero, o come era Pio XII, che erano papi che avevano la mitezza come cifra fondamentale. Poi avevano anche ovviamente la chiarezza dottrinale, avevano anche la fermezza disciplinare, quindi ci vuole una mitezza ed una fermezza, come chiunque, come un padre di famiglia che deve essere un padre capace di amare, di prendere le persone, i figli, con dolcezza, è vero, insieme alla moglie, ma anche con fermezza nel ribadire, di affermare i principi fondamentali. Il padre, come il Papa, dovrebbe rappresentare la regola, la norma, non l'eccezione. E quindi questo è un auspicio che si può fare, che ecco, il Signore, lo Spirito Santo, possa, è chiaro, nell'intreccio dei nomi, perché chiaramente dei nomi dovranno venire fuori. Naturalmente, per fare questo lavoro il conclave deve essere lungo, nel senso, cioè, non di essere frettolosi per dare subito in pasto il nuovo Papa, no, bisogna vagliare attentamente qualità, nomi, aspetti, in modo da più giorni passano nel conclave, più si può essere sicuri di un risultato, diciamo, apprezzabile. Certo, speriamo che non ci siano mosse, manovre tendenti ad abbassare il quorum, cioè Papa Giovanni Paolo II nella Costituzione Universi Dominici Gregis, che è quella ancora in vigore, stabilì che il conclave, almeno per un certo numero di scrutini, deve raggiungere i 2/3 il candidato per poter essere eletto. Ma perché? Perché è giusto che il Papa rappresenti l'ampia maggioranza, è vero, dei cardinali della Chiesa, non può essere espressione della metà, diciamo, dei cardinali. E quindi
Siamo ormai alla conclusione, ne viene fuori sostanzialmente, come vedete anche dalle immagini, un esponente di una chiesa umbratile, buia, anche questo primo piano sullo sfondo di BUX che non cura per nulla l'aspetto dell'immagine, vedete la zona in penombra, questo volto quasi piegato su se stesso, abbassato, è l'immagine di una chiesa fatiscente. Dio scrive la sua storia con gli uomini anche così. L'immagine, forse la regia può proporre un fermo immagine, ecco, vedete, sembra un teschio che emerge dalle catacombe, ditemi se mi sbaglio, guardate bene, sembra di essere entrati non nello studio di un monsignore, ma sembra che invece quello lì venga fuori da una catacomba medievale o rinascimentale, guardate la zona umbratile, buia, scura, ecco, senza volerlo, Monsieur BUX, che ringraziamo, ci consegna la vera quintessenza, direbbe von Balthasar, di questa chiesa unacum, buia, oscura, senza alcun barlume di Spirito Santo. Alla domanda sul successore, che idea si fa BUX, eccola lì, l'idea non è sua, è quella di tutto questo mondo trasversale, unacumista, in qualche modo anche sede vacantista e canonista, perché accanto a BUX ci poteva mettere benissimo Padre Farè. Li distingue il fatto che per BUX il disastroso e dittatore Bergoglio è Papa, per quell'altro no, ma la Chiesa è quella lì, e la Chiesa è quella lì, con questo sfondo così, buio, antiquato, vecchio, spento, senza nessun slancio, E BUX prevede l'elezione calla del Papa Mite, il portavoce del sogno post-Bergoglio, l'elezione di un Papa Mite, non dittatore, e quindi la speranza che non ci siano manovre dentro il conclave, che deve essere lungo, dice BUX, perché così i cardinali si possono conoscere. E lui all'inizio aveva detto, BUX, speriamo che, no, aveva detto che la Chiesa è in mano a Cristo, ci penserà Cristo a risolvere il problema. Ecco, io vorrei concludere, oggi non c'è spazio per le telefonate, magari ne prendiamo anche una sola a mo' di esempio, ma vorrei concludere così, non vi faccio vedere la conclusione, mi basta così. Proporrei, vorrei dirvi un paio di conclusioni. Innanzitutto, non l'ho mai detto, Bergoglio, rimettiti. Riprenditi presto, per favore, e prendi di nuovo in mano la situazione. Noi ti sosteniamo perché questa gentaglia di Chiesa merita che tu la condanni. Noi no, perché te l'abbiamo detto apertamente, di noi ti puoi fidare, siamo leali. Noi siamo leali nel gioco, siamo scesi in campo. Guarda chi ti sei ritrovato attorno. Figure come BUX che ti stanno contando i minuti, riprenditi presto perché è utile vedere come che fine fanno quelli che, siccome il gatto dorme, ballano come topi. Questi sono i topi unacum, che rodono il tessuto ecclesiale, che trasformano il dramma dello scontro finale, di quella che il Catechismo della Chiesa Cattolica chiama prova finale, in una sorta di gossip. Questa era la prima conclusione. La seconda, non accadrà nulla di tutto quello che questi prevedono, e dove sembrerà così è solo una messa in scena. Ci sarà un'alleanza trasversale, il padre Farè non farà alcun problema domani a ritrovarsi con Monsieur BUX. Ecco perché noi siamo demonizzati, trattati nel peggiore dei modi, e c'è gente che se n'è andata, perché questi pensano ad una continuità che non esiste. Quella non è la Chiesa Cattolica, lo si vede chiaramente. Ma chi mi chiama nel mio cellulare mentre faccio la diretta? Incredibile, ma incredibile. Guarda un po' chi mi chiama mentre faccio la diretta. Vabbè, dicevo, nel mio, non quello delle telefonate. Dicevo, questa è la conclusione. Vedrete che cosa accadrà. Anche Monsieur BUX, se ci campa lì nell'ambito della sua catacomba, dove sembra che la mummia gossipara abbia sillabato qual è la salvezza, si aspetti di vedere che proprio perché, come ha detto anche lui, ci pensa Cristo, la soluzione non sarà secondo le aspettative umane, perché questo è il tempo finale dello scontro, questo è lo scontro tra la donna vestita di sole e il drago infernale, e allora la Madonna interverrà e Gesù Cristo porrà fine a questo scempio che ogni giorno di più ci fa soffrire. Preghiamo per la conversione di MONS.BUX e di tutti gli 𝐸𝐿𝐵UX.